This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 137. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. Happy Monday, friends, protectors of the turn. We're back again, as always, ready to talk about Telemark skiing. And we're only a few months out from another snowy winter in the Northern Hemisphere. So, to get things started off, we're just going to do some quick updates. We've got some new merchandise coming in to Freeheel Life. You can find us at freeheellife.com. By the time this comes out, we should have a couple new designs. We brought back our drop knees tees. We've also got this awesome one I've been wanting to do for a while, Freeheel Free Mind. And you can check those out on the website. And we would love your support as we head through the summer and towards next fall. So today I brought back my good buddy Taylor Johnson, aka Telly Tay. Find him on Instagram and wherever else he may be on the interwebs. And we're gonna tackle some fun topics on the internet, which has kind of been a theme this summer. And there's lots of fun questions that have come in from folks that listen to the podcast, and also stuff that we're seeing out there floating around in the forums and all these interesting places. So, Taylor Johnson, welcome back.
Good to be back. As always fun hopping on the Freeheel Live podcast. Thank you for the Instagram shout out. It's very important to my internet ego that you tossed me a follow. But yeah, we got sort of a Q&A today, I guess, but I just wanted to touch on a couple things going on at Freeheel Life right now. We still got some protectors up for pre-order. By the time we are listening to this, we probably got the first couple pair of production skis in the press. Nate's been doing an awesome job kind of cranking through, getting all of the basically parts put together, building cores, matching up base and edge, cutting fabrics, marking top sheets, everything like that. At some point, I think it'd be cool to give you guys kind of a little more in-depth sort of behind the scenes of what actually goes into building a pair of protectors. But summer mode is sort of interesting for us with a little smaller crew and lots of random juggling of all sorts of stuff. So yeah, skis are still up for grabs. If you want to get a pair on the books, let us know. Miles or myself would be more than happy to chat about those skis if you got any questions about, what they ride like. Should have some stuff for, demo at this winter. So if you're going to be in Salt Lake and you want to take a lap on the protectors, or we'll have a couple pair of the skis in shop in inventory this year. So, whether you want to demo them or just touch and feel them before making that jump to a pair of Freeheel Life handmade skis, we're around. Thanks to everyone that has pre-ordered those. That really goes a long way for us as far as getting kind of a good gauge of what stuff we need to build, and kind of helps us gauge demand a little bit. As Josh mentioned, a bunch of new t-shirts and stuff. Admittedly, we kind of been slacking on that front for sure the last year, but maybe longer. So I apologize if you are looking for a sweet t-shirt or hat or hoodie or anything like that, to make sure that everyone knows you Telly, even when you're not in your ski gear. It's very important. So yeah, keep an eye on freeheellife.com, mailing list, social media, all that good stuff. We'll be getting all that new product in front of you guys that way, and would love to do some spread telemarking of rocking some merch. So that's kind of most of what's going on at the shop is merch and ski stuff, and working on a couple other little side projects just to get prepped, because opening day, October, seems a long ways away right now in July, but
2 months.
It's not that far away.
Like August, September, 3 months.
3 months, whatever. We'll be back to colder temps and snowstorms soon enough. I did actually ski on the solstice.
Oh yeah, you did go out and go skiing. How was that?
It was fun for the Instagram content. Made a sweet little reel.
Doing it for the gram.
Pretty much. It was not the best turns I've ever had, but I'd never skied on the solstice before, so that was just kind of fun to say. Oh, we skied on the longest day of the year, and then days are only getting shorter after that. So we're on the downward trajectory towards another great winter, hopefully.
I hope so. It's going to be good. It's going fast, that's for sure. And it's been good having you guys here this summer because usually I don't see you guys as often. And now
I know I'm doing a lot more Telemark related stuff, less golf related stuff.
Yeah, I know you're still a golfer. You gave me a golf lesson the other day.
Yeah,
I finally folded for everybody out there. For everybody out there that's ever heard me talk about golf, I have not ever bought into. Anytime I brought golf up, Tay's like, it's where the business happens, man, on the golf course. And I was like, whatever. I'm not golfing. And we went to the driving range. Someone might have saw some photo of the crew. We went to the driving range, and actually, you gave me a really good pointer. I could hit the ball better. So now I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, a little tip can go a long way. It's a lifelong learning journey, much like Telemark might be. You're never going to be, you never master it just because that's sort of a vague definition. You can always, you can do your best, or you could maybe reach your personal pinnacle, but your personal pinnacle could be one step higher every time.
I did show up with a sweet thrift store bag and a wood. I did get better clubs, but the original ones I found at the thrift store for very little money, these guys told me that was like the equivalent of leather boots and 3-pin
which
bindings.
is very in your style.
I know.
So like an old, actual wooden driver from the 80s compared to, the carbon fiber crown multi-material driver heads that, the rest of us all play now. But
because I think we brought up what's the guy's name that used to wear the knickers and plaid?
Payne Stewart.
It was Payne Stewart. I did know the guy's name. Okay. Yeah, I like that guy.
It turns out there's I don't know if this is the best way to say it, but there's like a lot of closeted golfers in the Telemark world. Yeah, I don't know that until I post like a mildly golf related thing on the Instagram, and then I get a bunch of DMs of, oh yeah, it's golf season. And just funny. I think there's obviously we got to do something in the summer. I mean, yeah, some of us may have access to a glacier or something like that where we could ski year round, but majority of us need something to do in the off season. And I think mountain biking or hiking or other sort of summer related activities are pretty common, but there's a few of us golfers out there. And admittedly, I don't put much golf content on. The Telete Instagram is very dedicated to purely Telemark skiing. So
what did we say you were going to be?
Tee It Up Tay should be like the alternate Instagram handle where I could just post golf content. But
Tee It Up Tay. Yeah. Well, if you're a golfer, I guess we're opening that up. Feel free to shoot us an email.
I also got some golf shirts coming. If they're not already here yet, we got kind of like the little polo shirts we wear for uniform wear. It's a nice like sport dry wick material type stuff. But if you want to rock a little Unity tracks on a polo shirt, those either are on the website now or will be available soon. So
those could make like a good après sort of tee too. In the winter.
Whatever you want to use it for. I mean, I like it just as like a polo shirt or a golf shirt. I can run straight from the shop to teaching a golf lesson in the afternoon, and I don't have to make much of a wardrobe change. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of been the last couple summers where it's just been you around the shop. I mean, I was full golf mode. Like admittedly, probably a golf bum. A little bit, figured out
You've done pretty good with the golf thing.
Kind of a part, like a good part-time that allows a lot of time to play golf. But you know what, the Freeheel life is requiring a lot more of my attention these days, which I'm totally stoked about. It's been interesting to be basically full-time through this summer with a couple of the other guys, and it's been kind of fun to get ahead on some of those projects that just midwinter during the chaos of everybody wanting ski gear is tough for us to sort of do that behind the scenes planning about making things run a little smoother in the winter, or just have plans in front of that stuff. So, I'm enjoying the summer work, but really looking forward to the winter to see what having, a couple extra months worth of work in the summer lets me and the whole crew get done with Freeheel Life stuff. So
yeah, that's
kind of exciting, but maybe enough golf talk, and we can shift back to the main topic of the Freeheel Live podcast, which is telemark skiing.
This is a good segue, because we were talking, because you're here more often, we often get to talk more about stuff we're seeing on emails, things coming in, and we thought today would be a really good opportunity to kind of share our thoughts. We have fun talking about it behind the scenes, and it's never ending. I mean, there's always people asking questions, so we wanted to kind of bring some of those questions, sort of a mailbag episode. I don't know, maybe we'll call it a mailbag episode, maybe we won't. I don't know.
Minor. I got a couple questions here on my computer, or if you got a good one to kick us off.
Why don't you fire it?
Okay.
Give me number one.
Number one, somebody asks, when is it worth upgrading, or when is it worth repairing? Which is, sort of an interesting question. I don't know if it's quite like, a car. You drive your old beater and then it needs a $3,000 transmission job or something, and you paid $2,500 for the car. That maybe may not make sense to replace the transmission.
I want to preface this answer with, this is an interesting thing, because people often think telemarketers do not want to spend money, which there are some people that would like to keep their gear going forever. But there are a lot of people that actually are interested in having up-to-date equipment. So I think there's a broad range is what I'd say. So
yeah, I mean, when to upgrade, that might be a personal decision. You might just wake up one day and say, man, that new stuff looks super fun and shiny, and I'm going to treat myself. Or I think this question is more phrased around like, I broke something, or I'm having problems with something and I need to either fix or upgrade. I think a good rule of thumb is, if the parts are available, like, you might as well repair it, for the most part. Like, I think there is sort of a tipping point where either, the parts are discontinued, so then you're kind of forced to upgrade. And
are you talking more bindings?
Pretty much. I mean, you don't, not that you can't like break a boot or break a ski or something like that, but usually
we have seen some funny boot repairs over the years, though.
Yeah, we have seen some funny boot repairs, but I think this question, is more along the lines of bindings. I think, if you have a like 22 Designs axle or vise, like at that point you could upgrade. The Outlaw is a great upgrade, but that requires boots, and then if you're doing boots and bindings, like, you might consider doing skis. Now, doing a remount on if you got a couple-year-old pair of skis that you're really digging, like, doing a remount is not the end of the world. But, those are still, like, current products, so the parts are all available. So, you could probably repair a binding for $15, $20, $30, whatever those cheap parts could be. At that point, it's for sure probably just repair. But, if you've had 5 years, 10 years on a product and it's starting to break, you might only break one part to start with, but that might mean that more things are coming, where it's just like, gear does have sort of a life cycle. I mean, some of those life cycles can be extended a little bit, but there's,
the return on your investment.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you could spend $30, $40 to repair something, but you might break the next part that didn't get repaired, and then do you get into like a snowball of, I'm just
constantly fixing stuff.
Or do I just want to start over?
I was going to say, so 22 is a good example, because I know we were sort of, the boot and the binding obviously has a relationship because of the NTN thing. In the last couple episodes I've been talking about that, and I think generally speaking, we're always saying, when you're ready for new boots. I mean, this is literally since 2014 when I started the shop, is people are like, well, when do I go to NTN, or I'm anti-NTN or whatever. And so I think we talk a lot about that. But if someone's coming in looking for new boots and and NTN fits them and we can walk them into it, that's a good time to upgrade the boot binding combo.
Yeah, the new boot crossroads. That's how I used to phrase it.
New boot crossroads.
Well, you just get to that fork in the road basically, or the cross in the road, and that's usually when we're having that talk. It's like when I would spend a lot more hours on the shop floor dealing with customers. I mean, that's how I phrased it, and came in, hey, I'm looking for new boots. Okay, we're having that conversation right now of what type of new boots are we going to go for?
Yep.
So
I was going to mention the thing that's interesting about 22, and this is sort of, if you're listening to the podcast, and I always try to think about stuff people may not know, but they think they know kind of thing. And one of them I think is the relationship of the hammerhead binding, for instance, because I mean, we've talked about that for years. Like, it's like one of the hammerhead, which predates the vise and the axle. I mean, incredible binding and holds a lot of value because people that ski that binding want it. There's still really good resale value, but that's one of those bindings where parts have not been made in, I mean, what are we talking? 5 years? 6?
At least I think they were starting to discontinue or phase out some of the repair parts even when we first opened the shop.
Because I remember we were able to like order parts.
Maybe that first second
like
year, 2014, 2015, something like that.
But so that's one thing. So like hammerhead's a good example where, and this is kind of true about a lot of bindings. So, not only are the parts difficult, and we sell used parts. And so it's kind of funny because I think of any shop in the world that you could go to, if someone's going to have a used part, it's probably us. And even we have a hard time. So just to frame that correctly. We have a
hard time with that. And it's like, at that point, the used part, when we put a used part into our inventory system, like it goes through a checkpoint of like, is this used and functional? That has to be the requirement. It has to be functional. It might not be the prettiest part in the world, but functional is important. So yeah, I mean, maybe, and at that point, it's like if it's a 15-year-old plastic piece that broke, and the only one available is a 15-year-old plastic piece that hasn't broke yet, unfortunately, it's probably going to break again. So,
and the other thing I was going to mention, people often don't think about is screws.
Mounting screws can be hard to find.
Like you think a hammerhead mounting screw is really unique. It's like a low head. It's a certain length. I mean, it's custom to the binding and custom to that plastic shim. So, I was just thinking about that relationship. So like in that case, someone comes in and they're like, man, I've been shredding my hammerheads. I love them. And you go to take them to the boot crossroads and they're like, yeah, I just bought a pair of Scott Synergies, or whatever, like last year. That person is probably thinking you might not have to guide them to NTN because they just made a boot purchase,
if you have a pair of boots that's, a season old, like it's a totally functional pair of boots and it's probably going to get another 5-10 years or more, depending on how many ski days you get a year.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's like, okay, there are still 75 bindings available for purchase. I'm just going to upgrade the binding. I don't have to do the boot, which, I think sometimes we get like criticized almost for, it's anytime you buy something new has to be NTN. That's not necessarily the case. But I mean, on that note, that almost leads into another question I got of like, why are boot companies killing off 75 millimeter boots? We've talked about that a lot, but
it's a conspiracy.
I mean, it's the businessman in me says that it's just a demand thing,
Yeah.
It's not that people wouldn't want to buy a new 75 millimeter boot, but when the vast majority of new boot purchases, in this case, like a lot of the boot companies, you might be able to buy a boot direct from them, but for the most part, they're going through a dealer network. The dealers are going to order what products customers want. That's was my goal when I was managing the retail shop. That's Miles' goal now of we want to carry things that, we think are cool, I guess, but ultimately it becomes we're ordering products that you think are cool or that you're going to be purchasing. So it's sort of like maybe a chicken or the egg type argument of why are they killing it off? It's, it's just a demand thing. Like if you sell 10 times the amount of NTN boots compared to the 75 millimeter boots, like the sort of data of purchasing behavior suggests make NTN boots, not make 75 millimeter boots.
And like we've been saying in these past, the last week or a couple weeks ago, we were talking about universal telemark norm, which essentially is, let's just get to one thing. Having more variety is great. As you're talking, I honestly think, and we've discussed this a lot over the years, but I think one of the problems because when you and I talk, when we talk within Freeheel Life, it always seems funny to me that there is this sort of like weird animosity between 75 and NTN. I always think that's sort of bizarre. Because we could go ski NTN and I'd be like, yeah, I can more or less make this feel like I want it to if I were to come from a 75 bunny, which leads me to believe that probably a lot of other retail points of contact for the consumer, it's just like that people they don't have that boot crossroads. And so it's like there's kind of this weird or opportunity to try it or stuff like that. So I just don't think there's as big of a difference as we're making it out to be.
Yeah, and I think it can be challenging to make a change. It is a different system, but yeah, it really, just comes down to demand, and we've surpassed that tipping point where NTN is outselling 75 millimeter. Years and years ago, even at our shop, it's been more NTN sales for the last 5 years or more.
We were just joking that Taylor's probably starting to feel old now because like we were talking yesterday, the day before, about when you started, T-Race was still on the wall, Yeah. And that's crazy to think. That seems like sort of like an ancient piece of history at this point, is the T-Race from Scarpa. But it's been trimming down. Even that's a good example too. I hadn't thought of is I remember you and I being like, I can't believe they're getting rid of the T-Race. And like we went to Scarpa and they're like, we don't sell any of them. Like it wasn't like why would they get rid of it if they're selling more of them, right?
Yeah, no, it's like if you're selling any type of product and you have maybe two comparable, but in this case, different norms, versions of the boot, you would have the TX Comp or the T-Race that are essentially the same boot with different binding compatibility. Like if you're if whatever that number is, if it's 5-1, 10-1, 20-1, whatever that is, you're going to put your money into housing inventory on the stuff that sells 10 times more than the stuff that sells 1x.
Yeah. The only example of bringing a 75 boot back that I think would be a good choice is white T-Race. That's the only example I can think of.
Yeah. And do like a limited edition drop, You
would literally sell thousands of those boots. So
yeah, I
may have or may have not mentioned this before in passing talks.
Yeah,
with
I think they should do a candy cane TX Comp throwback, like a white and red version of the NTN boot, basically.
If you live in a country that looks like a boot and you're listening to this podcast, we may want a white boot. I'm just saying.
Yeah, white boots are cool.
White boots are cool.
And
they didn't last very long, and literally people still spend a lot of money on those things, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure.
What color? Somebody shoot us a message. Shoot a message, podcast@freeheellife.com. I would love to hear what color boots you want, because Nate Dogg would love to hear this too, because he's Mr. Freeheel fashion. But I actually would love to hear that. Literally, you don't have to write a whole email. Just podcast@freeheellife.com, and in the subject line, just put boot color and then just one word.
Yeah,
black. White,
I'd be down for white,
red.
But white kind of holds like almost this weird sentimental value to me, because I remember being a young Telemark skier in 2000.
Last year,
6 or 7, whatever. Well, I'm young compared to some, but not young compared to people that work for me now. I'm the old man here.
That's hilarious.
But I guess that candy cane T-Race, I think, was 2008, 2009. both those seasons. I think they only did it for 2 years.
Yeah, I think it was only 2 years.
2 years of production, and then they switched to the last generation of that boot of black and red with a walk mode and stuff. But I mean, I think it was probably the winter of 2006, 2006, 07, and then that boot was dropped in 2007. And I have a very distinct memory of running into who I think you helped me determine was not you, but it was Dylan Crossman. I think back in the, now knowing you and like you were, on Scarpa and Rosignol stuff. And I can remember this guy on Scarpa and Rosignol stuff, which obviously, and I, was this 12-year-old Telemark skier and come up to this guy in the lift line. I'm like, dude, what are those? Those are sick. And he's just like, they're next year's boots. And I was like, what? Like, I was just like, that's like a mind blowing. I was like, those are so cool. Like white and red, like T-race boots. And, I forget what I was skiing on the time, but I might have been skiing on Black Diamond O2s and a pair of my dad's original Terminators hand-me-down with a newschoolers.com sticker on them.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably the only pair of Terminators that ever got stickered up with newschoolers.com. But yeah, that was kind of a fun memory. So if there was a white boot, I'd probably order 2 pair of them. Keep one new in the box forever, and then thrash one of them.
We've hit on this a lot, but I think Telemark's always gotten so gearheaded in a lot of ways. I think people don't realize how many people want, like, I don't know if fashion's the right word, but like color changes, and like part of innovation should be that. And I think there's plenty of examples that show that, but I think it gets lost in the mix.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard the term of a product-based company versus a marketing-based company, and some meetings that I've been able to participate in, and it seems like the certain companies that produce Telemark footwear are more interested in the product, less the marketing. But
I think make it the best product and then make it look cool.
Yeah, you should do a little of both.
But all right. Well, what okay, I got one. So after I did that UTN, for those of you who hadn't listened a couple weeks back, I was riffing off of a forum post that was over on Dossie's got kind of a backcountry talk forum that he's had for many years, and I was over there. As a result, we were talking about sort of getting boots and bindings into one category, essentially this universal norm, what I would call Telemark. Like, let's just get back to, here's a Telemark boot and binding. One of our great customers, Gary, had sent in, he said, hey, Josh, you asked for innovation. Here you go. I have an entire binding design, which I think addresses most of the desires you outlined in the Road to a Single Norm podcast. I would like your input. So, Gary, thanks for sending this in. Watch the video. Funny enough, the boys at the shop had shown me this video too. And basically, I guess what we're looking at is, and I'll try to remember to put this in the show notes so you guys can check it out because it's on YouTube. But essentially, it's a Majo with a... the flat step-in version of the Majo, but he has created a claw for the second heel that's much more similar to Outlaw X. And
yeah, it was, a pretty cool little, garage design.
Yeah.
It seemed like Gary has a better idea as to making custom parts for his personal Telemark binding than I would. Maybe he's an engineer or something, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. He pretty much, imagine an Outlaw X claw where that claw kind of sits up into that open position, and as you step down, it rolls on. But it was like Outlaw X claw, but on a Majo, so you got tech toes, and he had an additional feature where it could, an Outlaw X like goes to whatever, maybe it's like 45 degree like open position, and then it closes down to 0 or like -5 or however that sort of like magic happens, that this thing that wants to be in a 45 degree open position when there's a boot there somehow holds your boot in. I'm not really sure how that works.
You sound like an engineer,
but
for sure.
it rolls from, instead of like that 45-degree open position, I think there's like a little click or something, but then he can roll it all the way backwards to like, 180. So it's totally flat facing towards the back of the ski
for the tour mode,
where it doesn't touch the second heel, and it's all in the tour mode. So, that's pretty cool. I don't know exactly if Gary did this just because he thinks it's fun or because he was having problems with the regular step-in box on the Mejo, or I don't really know what his motivation was. He kind of just sent us this video link and say, hey, check this out. It's cool. I'm happy. Like, I'm stoked about this.
My take on that. Yeah. And I think it's cool to see what guys like Gary are doing. The only thing, so just my feedback on this, as I love that he used, I think Mejo has a lot of features. We've talked about this over the years on the podcast, is Mejo's got really interesting features. I think releasability is separated from tension of the spring. I've always thought that's phenomenal that Pierre came up with that. You really haven't seen, I'm trying to even think if anything's ever been like that. You could argue back like the TRP plate in 75 millimeter was like, you could change DIN releasability, but basically your binding was just stationary. So you kind of had whatever stiffness you wanted.
Same with like the Volet CRB. You could adjust the release tension, but you didn't really have adjustment. I guess you could have maybe got like the soft or the stiff spring cartridge from Volet, but you didn't really have.
It was like the binding was one thing and the release system was separate.
Yeah.
But I guess Mejo is the first that I can think of where it's like,
it's separate, but you can,
but it's also
like,
one
adjust
part
both.
Right.
It's all one part. Yeah, it's a pretty slick design. Like Mejo's got all the bells and whistles, but kind of cool to see. Yeah. So if we got that YouTube link in the show notes, like, scope it out. I'm not exactly sure what involved, like the whole mod and how he bolted it up and stuff. It looked like pretty custom. I'd have to look. Maybe I could look through Gary's orders on the back end of our website, but I think he did order just some parts,
maybe to build
a month ago or something, to kind of look at stuff or have an extra part on hand to modify.
My other feedback on it is, so I really like that's what I like about Mejo. I think that's the big win, is someone figured out how to do releasability and tension separate from one another. I would love to see if it's possible. Some of the plastic that's used on Mejo, I kind of would like to see if someone could come up with something that's maybe, and I don't know. This might just be, I don't know what this is based in, but when I think of like Rotofella free rides and sort of that type of plastic, it seems almost like it has a little rubbery component to it, which I like on the flex plate portion, or even metal. That's kind of what I've always liked 22, because it's almost like industrial design.
There's like maybe 4 plastic parts on the Outlaw. The Outlaw is pretty simple, as far as there's maybe, I don't know, like 10 or 15 different parts that make up the whole binding, whereas Mejo's like has all those other features but is more complicated, and there's probably 30 or more different parts, between little pieces of plastic, springs, screws, tech pins, etc. So it's kind of cool that they did that simple and sort of that heavy metal kind of industrial design.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I think people miss a lot, and I like Gary's idea for sure. Where we rarely see the innovation is regular toe cage, and I think but basically all the elements are floating out there in front of us. If you take an Outlaw and you look at some of the really cool stuff about that, and you look at, really, if you take the whole span of bindings that have ever existed, there's a lot of really cool elements, but there's a lot of combination of those elements that I don't think people have put together. So that's what I would like to see. And so kind of general feedback, but Gary liked the stuff. General feedback is just, the more customization and the more durability, and maybe a version that is non-tech toe. But I like the tech toe too. So all you people that think I hate tech toe and I'm only NTN, that's not true.
Not true, but
TTS for life, baby.
For some, that is the way. I got another one here about what costs should I be expecting when getting into Telemark.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. One, it's just cool to state that there's new people that are interested in Telemark. We've definitely in the last couple of years, there's more interest from, people that have never done it before, or maybe they borrowed their friend's setup once or did a demo or a rental somewhere. But that does bring up a good question of what costs to expect. Anything like basically any activity has some costs associated with getting into that activity. Maybe you could get into playing basketball pretty cheap. There's basketball courts at a park and you can buy a basketball for probably like $15 or something. That's a low barrier to entry. Telemark, skiing in general, that barrier to entry is higher, but costs you could expect if you're the type of person that either, has the money to do so, or just you want to have like the best stuff, you're probably looking at $1,500 to $2,000 for like a full kit, like top of the line, brand new everything. There's also, literally all the way down to like I found a pair of skis in the dumpster for nothing, or Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, used equipment like that. You could totally get into like a very solid starter setup for $200-$400, which I think a lot of people sometimes maybe that's a good step in of all that new stuff looks really shiny, but $1,500 is a big commitment for something I've never really done. Mm-hmm. But you can sort of get into it for your own setup. For let's say you find a ski boot binding for $300-$500. Like you're into that. It's totally functional gear. Maybe you get 2 seasons out of it where you're learning the technique, and then you realize, this is the most fun turn on snow. Like as we know, but not everybody knows. Obviously, once you realize that, then maybe you want to treat yourself to upgrades. But it's kind of up to you with that question of. You can pretty much spend as much or as little as you'd like to get into something. I think for the most part, every dollar you spend additional is probably allows you to get into something slightly newer or slightly, more high performance, but like you can totally find a old cable binding, an old pair of boots and, whatever skis, they got, whether it's a binding and ski matchup and might be not the newest ski in the world, but like a ski's a ski as far as I'm concerned when you're just starting, like just to get you on something. So anywhere from, maybe, $200-$300 or less, maybe your homie has a pair of boots that are just destroyed, but you could get them off him for a 6-pack or something. Like, there's ways to do it in a affordable manner, but
I think I think you nailed it. I think that's a good price recap. I think one of the interesting parts about Telemark that you might not experience in maybe alpine skiing. As I'm kind of thinking through this as I'm talking, but one of the things is if you are dumpster diving for that pair of skis or whatever, you do kind of get what you pay for in that sense. But you're also like, sometimes with the older used gear, especially if it's freebies or super, super cheap, is you might be buying into like an era of Telemark. And I think that's kind of an interesting feature. I think one of the things I've always loved about our shop is like, whatever you bring in, we're going to work on it and we're going to help you get it going.
Yeah. There's not like your binding is not condemned like in the alpine world where, it's sold that a shop will not take the liability to work on it because the DIN settings, maybe fatigue or whatever. When we start talking about alpine skiing, that's really talking out of my wheelhouse. So I'm not exactly sure the process.
Yeah. Whenever we talk about this, you guys, like we actually don't know what we're talking about. So just take that with a grain of salt. We might be making it up,
but basically Telemark bindings do not have that feature or requirement where, like one of our techs is, will not work on your stuff because it's so old. Like we might make some, give you some advice about, well, this is pretty old and you're probably going to keep breaking parts and it might be a safety issue. We might recommend that, but ultimately I guess it's at your own risk.
Yeah, well, and I think honestly we got a lot of business like that, total side note, but people would walk in with old tele gear into other shops, and then they ended up at us. They're like, oh yeah, those Freeheel Life guys, they'll help you out.
Yeah, that might have been just they don't have a mounting jig, or they just don't want to work on old stuff, or and in my opinion, like if you have access to get your equipment to our shop, like I would for sure rather have a ski tech that literally only does Telemark stuff work on my Telemark skis than a ski tech that maybe mounts 3 pair of tele bindings a year. Like,
yeah,
sometimes your options may be limited, but like, for the record, like our tech shop will take service tickets from wherever. Majority of our service tickets are from our retail store, or you purchase something online and you buy a ski and a binding together. Like one of our customer service reps is going to reach out to you if you don't leave an order note or something, that we're going to offer the binding mount to do the service, just because that might be easier, where you just order something online, you order a ski and a binding and it shows up mounted to your boot size and you're good to go. But people also ship us things, that gets a little more expensive, where like if you were going to order a pair of skis that we don't carry online, you can ship, you can just change the shipping address. You could, ship from wherever that you bought the ski to our shop. If you get in touch with us, then we know there's a package out there with a certain name on it. We can tie to, if you bought a binding from us, and we can, do that stuff. And then there's sort of the difference in the shipping costs of just the binding, if it was like a free shipping order, and the whole ski boxes are a little bit more expensive. But, if you're willing to do that, like, yeah, that binding mount that is normally $50 might end up being $100 after you add a shipping charge on one end or the other. But we can make we can get a work ticket going for somebody even if you don't walk into the retail store.
Well, and I was gonna I just realized I didn't really complete my thought on getting into that era of Telemark. Well, all I was gonna say is if you get older gear, I think it's totally awesome. Like if you get a cheap setup, we always pick on the Targa and the those early 2000 setups are all over the place. T2, 2-buckle boot, Targa, some K2 random ski. There's just literally like that setup. When we see it, we're like, oh yeah, there was like a million of those out there. I think as long as someone gets in with patience and just kind of goes, I know that I'm buying into an era of Telemark. Like maybe modern gear isn't necessary, like the most up-to-date gear isn't that setup per se, but I think it's cool. And honestly, sometimes it's good for people to start there and then go, okay, I'm into the turn. Because I think no matter what era of gear, I'm convinced that once people link the first couple turns, it doesn't matter which era they bought into, so to speak. Once they link them, they're like set to jet, and they're like, oh, okay. Honestly, if you can kit yourself out with the most modern gear, NTN, you're sort of just starting at a different place.
I don't know. That sort of brings up a interesting topic that we've had a debate with, because, like, I've seen, like, you sort of started Kate on G3 Targas,
yep.
And I've had other friends that are interested in starting Telemark, and I sent them out on an NTN setup. So it's like there's sort of an argument, I think, with the Targa and a T2, which is like what the setup they were riding. That's maybe like easier to get into a Telemark position, but I think on the NTN, once you're in the Telemark position, you have more control over the ski.
It requires more technique. I kind of hesitate to say more because it's almost different. Like lateral stability is a real thing with cable binding versus NTN.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's sort of interesting of like what you start on. I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong, but yeah, that does sort of bring up a debate of like what should people start on, because I would never at this point start somebody on your original setup, like a newbie Telemark skier. Like I'm not sending them out on 210 Europa 99s with like mega low cuff boots.
No, think about it. Like, there's a reason I made all you guys ski leathers, because I think there's a certain intrigue, and I also want you guys to have that history of it. But Yeah, I mean, if you're a young, ripping alpine guy, girl, or snowboarder, and you're like, hey, get into Telemark, and you give them some 1980s gear, and it's not just for a joke, like they're not just like in cutoff jeans and pit vipers, and they're like, yeah, this is sick, and it's that time of year, they're probably not going to do it again. Because one, they're just not going to be able to keep.
Yeah, even my first day on pins, which you were witness of.
I was there. Yeah,
like I'm definitely a stronger Telemark skier now than I was, but I thought I was a fairly proficient Telemark skier, like enough, like I could make Telemark turns on pretty much any terrain in front of me and could do them, in decent balance, like relative, a little bit of aggression or maybe purpose is a better, it's like I could make a turn with a purpose, maybe not like aggressive. Sometimes Tele is more about the smooth flow, but
yeah, brah.
But that first day on leather and pins, I mean, I couldn't even comprehend. Like I couldn't imagine the learning curve of like the only thought going through my head is like, wow, I thought I was decent at this, and I did 100 face plants that day just trying to figure it out. Like if you started on leather and pins, you probably did 10,000 face plants before you linked 4 turns together.
Yeah,
you paid your dues the hard way.
Yeah, and there's so many little caveats to that, but yeah, whatever gear you're going to get into, I mean, I think the most modern gear has a lot of advantages, and I think it's a great way to get people to Telemark from rental. I think it's just over and over we just talk about access. Like if someone can try it, and the only thing I was going to throw into the price too is instruction, and whether you've got an awesome Telemark friend that can do it for free, or carve out a little bit of that cash to take like 2 or 3 lessons from somebody really good, which is hard to find. It's hard to find people that can actually teach Telemark out of the ski schools. But I think that's something really, honestly, even if you had kind of like we don't want to call it crappier gear, but like, it's older gear, but you take a lesson from someone in some fashion, I think that's going to accelerate your love for it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree on that statement, because for me, it was interesting. The first time I ever like had instruction per se, I had a dad and a grandfather who was Telemark skiers that, as a little kid, I don't really remember like asking them questions about technique or anything. And, maybe I have to ask my dad about that but I'm pretty sure it was just, he sort of let me go on the gear and sort of figured it out eventually. But I was in college at the community college here, Salt Lake Community College. They offered a skiing class, and that was like my gym credit one year. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do the skiing class. And it ended up being, when they sorted us out up into groups at Brighton, we did like 6 or 8 Friday morning lessons, which was super cool. And then we had like a day pass for the rest of the day. So we do like 2 hours of lessons, and we could go ski around if we wanted. But I got in a group that had an instructor that was PSIA on Alpine side and on Tele side. And most of my little group in that class, there was like 5 or 6 of us about the same ability level. Most of them were on Alpine, but the instructor did do at least 2 of those 8 days on his Tele gear with me. But even when he was on Alpine gear, just to like have some, professional eyes on me, I felt like I got a lot out of that class, even, where maybe, self-taught or just kind of learned through osmosis. But, to have a pro, say, hey, try this, try that, here's a drill, whatever they said. For me, that was really interesting to start thinking about a little more technique and sort of how to make that effective. So that was really fun. If you have access to instructors or lessons, or, a friend is for sure helpful. You should try and take advantage of that. There's definitely, unfortunately, limitations with certain resorts are, you can only book a private half-day lesson that is, might be more expensive than the equipment you're starting on. Maybe that doesn't quite make sense, but if the resort does, Tele Tuesdays or workshops or anything like that, like even just having the ability to be around other Telemark skiers.
That's what I was going to say. Hot tip. most telemarketers will take a run with you and help you out.
Yeah, that's kind of another cool part about tele people in general. If you just see someone in the lift line, like I personally think that's really cool. Of, you know, if I see, you can kind of tell, like if you're a seasoned telemark skier, you can tell someone's like a newbie, which is awesome. I want more newbies out there, which means more people are trying tele.
You can see the pain in their face.
Yeah, you can see them from a mile away. But you know, being able to, if I see a newbie and you catch a lift ride with me or something, there's that conversation's probably going to come up. And you know, if you're brave enough to ask, just say, hey, can I follow you for a lap? Like, I'm just picking up tele. I would say the vast majority of telemark skiers would be like, yeah, dude, let's do a lap. You know, like, at least to just have a visual kind of, I think, is fun. And especially if you can get a group of people that want to tele together, there's sort of like that. For me, it's a little bit of competitive attitude, but if I see my friend make a really good turn, that sort of inspires me with confidence to make a really good turn on, you know, the same face or whatever we're doing. But yeah, that's sort of a tangent about, I guess the original question was what was the cost of getting into it, and here we are probably like 10 minutes later talking about lessons.
The cost is passion and time.
Pretty much. Yeah. If you make a commitment to it, you know, that's you're going to pay in somehow.
There's a pay in for sure. But yeah, I think the monetary side of it is real, especially these days. So, but yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of easy ways to cut the cost and get in, see if you like it. So
anything else on your docket, or did we kind of get through our little mini mailbag?
I think we're good. See, we're always like, I mean, we burned through an hour, and I'm sure, thanks for hanging in there, people, if you're still here, because people seem to listen for the majority of the time. No, I'm good. Awesome chatting with you. There's always a bunch of fun questions. I think those are some good ones that hit on for people starting to think about next year too. So,
yeah, thanks again for having me on. Always fun to hop on the Freeheel Live podcast. We're here at the shop. We're cranking on the last few of our summer projects. If you need anything, or you know, are looking for advice on anything from hard goods to, you know, you just want to score a cool new t-shirt that, you know, we've been working on, we're around, shipping orders every day, answering emails and phone calls pretty much every day. For some reason we don't get back to you on something, just send us a follow-up. It's not because we ignored you on purpose. It's probably just because we're doing 10 different things at the same time some days. But yeah, all the new t-shirts and merch and stuff like that, like, we're really happy with. I think it was last year we sort of upgraded, in my opinion, the garment that we've been printing on. They're you know, definitely a high quality shirt. So hopefully you agree, if you order one, that you're impressed with the quality, because we looked at a lot of different samples on t-shirts and hats and stuff, and you know, we want to make sure that really anything gets our name is up to a certain standard, whether that's the skis we're building or the t-shirts we're printing. Like, I don't want to put out any crap that has the Freeheel Life name on it. That's for sure.
I love that, man. Thanks for being here. Check out Telite at Telite on the Instagram. And that's how you support us, everybody. Freeheellife.com. Hit me up at podcast@freeheellife.com. Let me know what boot color you want to see out in the future. And any other questions. We love doing these ones where we can bring some people on and just shoot the breeze. So until next week, brothers and sisters of the turn, spread telemark always. See you later.